Chapter 353. You dare to have any ideas on my seventh older brother. I will definitely make you wish you were dead. In the corner, Ren Wanyun roared. One did not know why her voice was so rough and unpleasant to listen to, and that pair of eyes that were staring at the sky from the moment they entered the room had unknowingly locked onto Shan Miao's body. There was a fierce glint like that of a vicious wolf. Why would I have any ideas on seventh younger brother? Shan Miao gently smiled. If second Shun do not believe, I can swear that if I have any ideas on seventh older brother, then let the heavens strike me with lightning and die a horrible death. When the words were spoken, there was some surprise in the eyes of the few people in the room. Jingjia, who had not spoken all along, was somewhat anxious. How could Shen Miao make such a heavy oath? They had always regarded oaths very seriously, and Shen Miao said it so calmly that she did not even have the chance to stop it. Ren Wanyun did not relax her vigilance against Shen Miao because of this and sneered. You tried every possible means to come here and say all these provocative words to see if I am crazy or not. It would not be just to make this poison oath, right? She said, Shen Miao, I cannot win against you. It is me who have underestimated you. If I can redo it, I will definitely kill you before you have grown to this age and will not be soft-hearted. Second Shen really knows how to joke. Shen Miao said, When have you been soft-hearted towards me? You have already forced me to such a point in Qing'er, and Yuaner's mishap is not unrelated to you. If it was not for seventh older brother, I will definitely perish together with you. Ren Wanyun gritted her teeth. I know that second Shen is also not willing to perish together with seventh younger brother, so I also know that second Shen will not be sick for long. What exactly do you want to do? Ren Wanyun stared at her. What other means do you have? Do not hesitate to use them. Shen Miao smiled warmly. Second Shen need not be so unreasonable. I came here to give you a way out. Way out? Ren Wanyun said sadly. Since it has reached such a point, what way out do I have? Could it be that second Shen thinks that the current situation is the worst? Shen Miao was surprised. Second Shen has always been intelligent. How can one be so muddled? What do you want to say? Ren Wanyun's face sank. It's simple. Shen Miao smiled. Now in the courtyard, Wan Yinyang is coaxing Second Shu until he is happy. Second Shen had never thought that if Wan Yinyang gave birth to a son for Second Shu, what should seventh brother do? Ren Wanyun's body stiffened. Second Shen is also well aware of whether Second Shu values Wan Yinyang or Second Shen. Thus it is unknown whether Second Shu values Wan Yinyang's son or seventh younger brother. If there was a day when Wan Yinyang was promoted to be a Ping wife, this second household would have 2D sons, but these 2D sons are not biological brothers. You guess. Shen Miao lowered her voice. Will they kill each other? Ren Wanyun's heart jumped when she heard this. That one has Wan Yinyang's protection, seventh younger brother has Second Shen's protection, but Second Shen, at that time, will you still be able to speak in the second household like before? Shen Miao's words stabbed the heart, and Ren Wanyun could not help but retort. That slut did not give birth to a son before, and it is even more impossible for her to give birth to a son in the future. Second Shen is indeed smart. Shen Miao sighed. This is what I want to say. Could it be that Second Shen thinks that other than Wan Yinyang, Second Shu will not have any other woman? She was so magnanimous in discussing the matters between men and women of the elders, and her composure made one gasp in amazement. Ren Wanyun was surprised by Shen Miao's words. That's right. She was clearer than anyone else about Shen Gui's conduct. How could Shen Gui only have one woman? When she was still the matriarch, Shen Gui would bring concubines into the house one after another. If it was not for the fact that she fed those foxes the broth to end their offspring, one feared that the second household would be overcrowded. You see, one can guard against it for a while, but not for a lifetime. Even if one can guard against Wan Yinyang, there will still be other Yinyangs. There are innumerable women in the world that can give birth to children, and there are also innumerable women that want to enter the second household. Unless Second Shen can still control the inner courtyard like in the past and feed all of Second Shu's women the broth to end their offspring. But does the current Second Shen still have that ability? Even if there is, that year Wan Yinyang still gave birth to third older sister. In the future, will there be another Wan Yinyang? There was a little panic on Ren Wanyun's face. Shen Miao's words were stabbing a knife into her soft ribs. The only thing she could rely on was giving birth to a son. If she did not even have this, what would happen in the future? Second Shin, could it be that you want to see the family that you have worked so hard to manage, the money in the residence, in the end not be obtained by second older brother or seventh younger brother, but by another woman's son? Second older brother is brilliant and outstanding. It was obvious that everything in the second household should belong to him, but now someone else came into the house and made wedding clothes for others. Are you willing? Renwan Yun stared at Shin Miao. What do you want to say? I will give you a way out. Shin Miao smiled gently and took out a bag of things from her sleeves and placed it in Renwan Yun's hands. Infertility medicine, 4 males to use, she said softly. Chapter 354. Infertility medicine, 4 males to use. Renwan Yun lowered her head and looked at the paper bag that Shin Miao placed in her hands and could not help but tremble. How is it a good idea to give any Young an infertility medicine? Even if one cannot give birth to a son, there will be a second one and a third one. Second Shin, you will not be able to guard against it all. Shin Miao's words seemed to be slightly bewitching, and when it landed on one's ears, it was pleasing to the ears. Why should I believe you? Who knows if it is arsenic inside? Renwan Yun said contemptuously. If Second Shin does not believe me, naturally one can let the maids bring some out to ask the physician or find an animal to feed it. If it is not possible, one can throw it away and buy it yourself. I am only pointing the way and Second Shin has to be willing to do it. Why do I want to do this? Renwan Yun stared at Shin Miao and said coldly. Why? Shin Miao thought for a moment. Most likely if Second Shu does not have the ability to bear children in the future, then seventh younger brother's D-son position would be stable. Not only that, as Second Shu's only successor, seventh younger brother would definitely be able to obtain Second Shu's favor. Things are precious when they are rare. Renwan Yun smiled. Do you think that I do not know what you are planning? Shin Miao, I have underestimated you. You want the second household to have no descendants. Words cannot be said like this. Shin Miao pretended to be surprised. How can the second household be considered to have no descendants? Isn't there still seventh younger brother? But could it be that Second Shun thinks that in the future there will be another child with Second Shu? She jokingly said, even if Second Shin has this ability, it would also depend on whether Second Shu is willing or not. Presumptuous. Xiang Lan angrily rebuked. You do not know shame. Renwan Yun was so angry that her face turned red. Shin Miao's words were clearly ridiculing that she was old and that Shan Gu-a, that kind of person who lusted after beauty, was dismissive of her. But Renwan Yun also understood that after so many years, Shan Gu-a was no longer as gentle to her as before. Her face was not attractive to Shan Gu-a, and it would be difficult to have another child. Be it shameless or presumptuous, one is after all thinking for you. Shin Miao smiled gently. I have already given Second Shin a way out. It is up to Second Shun to choose whether to walk out or block the road. She stood up and seemed to have thought of something. She tilted her head and said, of course, Second Aunt can also tell Second Uncle about this. After all, you are a family. However, I have to remind you that my parents and old madam have already fallen out with each other. They've already shed all pretense of cordiality, so I'm not afraid of anything else. Renwan Yun sat down and did not speak as Xiang Lan and Kaiju stared at Shin Miao vigilantly. That's all I have to say. Goodbye. Shin Miao smiled and walked out. After Shin Miao left, Xiang Lan stepped forward and looked at Renwan Yun to ask, Foreign, really want to listen to Fifth Young Lady's words? Fifth Young Lady definitely does not have any good intentions. Kaiju echoed. Her doing this is obviously to deliberately go against Master. It is going against Master. Renwan Yun said in a low voice, but now, Master and I are no longer on the same line. Madam means. Xiang Lan's eyes widened. Renwan Yun lowered her head and said, let me think again. In the eastern courtyard, naturally there were people paying attention to every move at this end. When Shan Miao and Jingzhe just stepped out of the door, they saw an unfamiliar maid coming over with a smile. Fifth Young Lady, Wan Yinyang heard that you were in the courtyard and would like to invite you in for a chat. There are still some matters. Another day. Shun Miao did not give any face at all and directly refused. That maid was somewhat embarrassed but was helpless and could only watch Shan Miao and entourage walk away before turning around to report to Wan Yinyang. Chapter 355. Is she trying to draw a line with us? Wan Yinyang was somewhat angry, but there was more worry as she said to Shin Dongling, Dongling, could this fifth young lady be walking together with foreign and want to deal with us together with foreign? How is it possible? Shun Dongling shook her head. Because of eldest sister's matter, they would not be together. But why is fifth young lady always turning a blind eye to our good intentions? Wan Yinyang paced back and forth. Could it be that she looks down on our background? Speaking till here, her voice dimmed. After all, she is a young lady, Yinyang. Shin Dongling put down the book and said with some headache, what are you thinking about? Fifth younger sister is not willing to associate with us, and it is definitely not because of our own reasons. I see that fifth younger sister is not warm to the entire Shun residence, and one fear that she does not want to have any connection with the second household. Thus she turned a blind eye to us. Since that is the case, there is no use in fawning, and it is better to do less of such things in the future. But Wan Yinyang still wanted to say something. There is no but. Shin Dongling interrupted her words. As long as we abide by the rules and do not make any mistakes, naturally there will not be any trouble. At the other end, Jingzhe, who had returned to the room, was asking Shen Miao softly, young lady, will second foreign really drug second master? Of course. Shen Miao looked at her nails and said lightly, Run Wan Yun values children the most, and now that one son and one daughter have been lost, there is only Shen Yuanbo left. Unfortunately, Shen Gue is not a kind-hearted person, so only by drugging Shen Gue would one be able to preserve Shen Yuanbo's position. But what if second foreign tells second master about this matter? Gu Yu had been worried about this matter. No, if Shen Gue knew that he was drugged with an infertility drug, he would definitely hate Ren Wan Yun to the bones. Even if Shen Yuanbo is his only child, he would also vent his anger on Shen Yuanbo. Even if Ren Wan Yun wanted Shen Yuanbo to live well, she would hide this matter to death. Perhaps Shen Gue will never discover the fact that he is unable to give birth to a son. Even if the doctor had seen it, he would never think that it was Ren Wan Yun who drugged him. Then, Jingzhe clenched her teeth and seemed to be hesitating before finally saying, even if second foreign secretly drugged second master and second master really could not give birth to a son, isn't there still a seventh young master? The seventh young master is still young, but when he grows up and understands, he will probably seek revenge on Miss for the sake of the second young master and eldest young mistress. To raise an enemy since young, and young lady had made such an oath. Shin Miao said in front of Ren Wan Yun that she must not have any ideas on Shen Yuanbo. Otherwise the heavens would strike her with thunder. Such a heavy poison oath. Even Jingzhe was somewhat shocked to hear it now. Since the oath was made, I did not have any intention to hit Shen Yuanbo, Shin Miao said. Even so, seventh young master will definitely treat young lady as an enemy. Gu Yu reminded. There is an enemy that is always lurking in the dark. Let's wait until he grows up. Shin Miao smiled. Unfortunately, Shen Yuanbo did not have the chance to grow up. Just 1 year later, there was a plague in the Ding capital and Shen Yuanbo died because of smallpox. At that time, Shin Miao had already married to Fu Xiuyi, and at that time the entire Ding capital was in a state of panic. Luckily, Shen Xian and the rest were fighting in the northwest region and escaped the calamity. It was still all right for the noble families in the city, but many of the poor commoners died. Shin Yuanbo was not able to escape the calamity. Shin Miao had always believed that heaven's justice was clear and karma was not good. It was just that one had to see if the retribution was enough. The sins that Shin Gue and wife did in the past lifetime was retribution on Shen Yuanbo. But the second household still had Shin Yuan and Shin Qing, and in this lifetime without Shin Yuan and Shin Qing, following the path of the previous lifetime, Shin Yuanbo would eventually lose his life. Even if they did not want the assets that old General Shun had left behind, they still wanted to firmly separate from the family. Old Shin Foreign knew that she still needed to borrow Shin Xian's money and prestige, so in a moment of desperation, she pretended to faint from a stroke, which made one feel angry and funny at the same time. Now that Zhang Mama came to inquire about the news, naturally she wanted to probe the first household's intentions, and thought that Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan only said so in a moment of anger. If she comes to ask again, tell her that we have made up our mind to separate from the family, and ask her to take good care of old madam. If old madam does not recover after a long time, it would be good to ask the elders of the family to come. The elders in the tribe had always looked down on old Shen Foran's background, and when old General Shen was alive, he favored Shen Xian, so naturally the elders would be biased toward Shen Xian. When the people from the clan came to separate from the family, they would definitely not let old Shen Foran get any benefits. This servant understands. Bai Lu smiled as she left the room. Shin Miao sat down in front of the table. This lifetime's journey had just begun, and one had to plan so much. However, it was not an easy matter to protect the Shin family at the same time as taking revenge. It had to be done step by step. These disturbances in the Ding capital were just a joke after one's meal. After talking about it, one would laugh it off and no one would remember it. Even if it was a topic of conversation, after a few days, it would be covered by fresh matters. When people die, the lights go out. The world was just that cold. Bao Xianglu was still as lively as usual. Recently, there was a new batch of Persian dancers who were beautiful and bold. All the aristocratic young masters in the capital flocked to them like ducks. Bao Xianglu's business was flourishing, but now it was almost overcrowded. Men were greedy for novelty and liked the new and hated the old. The new dancers were very popular for a while the former top courtesans seemed to be deserted and depressed. However, among these greedy men, there was one who was different. When he walked to the door, the young lady at the door waved her handkerchief and giggled. "Master Mo, today there is no need to order young Lady Luing, right?" Chapter 357. Mo Qing placed the money in the young lady's hand and said, "Old rules." That young lady was half jealous and half envious as she said, "This lord is indeed a sentimental person. Luing is really a blessing that was cultivated in the previous lifetime." Finishing, she twisted her waist and went upstairs to call someone. When everyone was rushing over to the new young lady, Mo Qing was unshakable as he pointed at Lu Ying's name. Those who did not know would think that he had fallen in love with Luing, but only he and Luing knew whether he had fallen in love or not. Opposite Bao Xianglu, at the window seat of Kuai Hua Lu, 3 people were drinking with each other. Ji Yushu pointed to Mo Qing's figure from afar as he entered Bao Xianglu. "Look, look, he went over again. What is there to look at?" Gao Yang rolled his eyes at Ji Yushu. "Go once every 3 days, one night at a time, and leave at dawn the next day without staying for a moment longer. This is something that you've memorized by heart. Is there a need to be surprised?" Ji Yushu was not to be outdone as he stared back at Gao Yang. "Are you stupid? We both know about this, but Xie Sanxiong has just come back. How would he know? I'm not trying to make it clear to him." Opposite of the two of them, Xie Jingxing was leaning on the sofa, lazily looking at Bao Xianglu. Today, for the first time, he did not wear purple clothes but wore a black narrow waist-long robe, making him look much colder. However, upon closer inspection, there seemed to be a travel-worn expression on his face. It was obvious that he had just returned from his journey. "Xie-san, how did it go? How are those people?" Gao Yang asked. "They're all death warriors. If we can't get anything out of them, we'll kill them all." Xie Jingxing was a little distracted. "Time is tight. We have to move quickly. What is the use of moving fast?" Ji Yushu complained. The thing was not found. Xin Yuan had previously made a move and was close to Fu Xiaoyi, so he might have some chips in his hands. But now that he is dead, Gao Yang muttered to himself, "Fu Xiaoyi should think of ways to find something from Shan Yuan's body." "I want to make another trip to the Shan residence." Xie Jingxing frowned. "It is impossible not to find it." Hey, forget it, let's not talk about this for now." Ji Yushu interrupted their conversation. "Speaking of which, we have been waiting here for so long and see this surnamed Mo running to Bao Xianglu every 3 to 5 days. What is the meaning of this? Could it be that Miss Shun treated her servants so generously? Even the money for the servant to look for the young lady was taken out as well. For such a cushy job, to be so generous, you are even more generous than me, the shopkeeper of Feng Xian Pawn Shop. Have you ever seen a girl run away at dawn every day?" Gao Yang looked at Ji Yushu. "Why do I remember that when you look for young lady Xiao Yao, You would always stay in others' boudoir and not leave, wishing that you could stick to her side every day. The spring night is bitter and short, so how would one be so unromantic? At least you would draw her brows and talk to her, leaving within 2 hours every time. It is like completing a task. Have your eyes grown to the sky? Xie Jingxing glanced at the two of them. Can't you see that there's someone on the other side? His eyes swept downwards and the other two were surprised for a moment. Following Xie Jingxing's gaze, they saw a green-clad male standing at the corner of the street opposite Baoxianglu, looking at Lu Ying's little building in a daze. Looks rather ordinary, Ji Yushu said, seeing him dressed so shabbily. One look and one can tell that he wants to go in to look for a young lady. Does he have money to satisfy his craving? What is the difference? This person. Gao Yang looked from afar. The figure is somewhat familiar, as if one had seen it somewhere. Pei Lang. Xie Jingxing said. Who is Pei Lang? Ji Yushu asked. Guang Wentang's teacher. I remember. Gao Yang also said, previously seen him at the palace banquet. But what is he doing here? Chapter 358. Teacher. Ji Yushu swallowed his saliva. Teacher also came to visit the brothel? This Guang Wentang was said to be the academy that all the noble families in the Ding capital had to enter, so how could a teacher be so morally corrupt? You visit the brothel all day. Why is it not morally corrupt? Gao Yang asked Ji Yushu. Ji Yushu retorted, I do not teach students. Shut up, Xie Jingxing said. Such a big person is here and both of you did not discover it. I also do not know him. Ji Yushu felt wronged. There are so many people coming and going outside Baoxianglu, and I only pay attention to the abnormal. This gentleman did not look any different, so how would I know that he is a teacher? Gao Yang looked at Xie Jingxing. You feel that there is a problem with Pei Lang? But he is just a poor scholar. Shen Miao never do unnecessary things. There must be a reason for her subordinate to look for Lu Ying. Previously I did not understand, but after seeing him, I understand. Xie Jingxing's eyes landed on Pei Lang in the distance. You are saying... Gao Yang was deep in thought. This Shen Miao took such a big detour. And it was actually directed at Pei Lang? Xie Jingxing's lips hooked up into a smile, and there seemed to be a deep meaning in his eyes. One do not know why but feel that Shen Miao especially values this Pei Lang. From the things that were investigated, Pei Lang is just a poor scholar, so there must be a problem. This is not simple, Ji Yushu exclaimed. I know the reason behind it. Gao Yang and Xie Jingxing turned their heads to stare at him. Ji Yushu coughed and said with a beaming smile, Too simple. I looked at the figure and saw that this person should be a jade tree with extraordinary looks, and in addition he is a teacher, so he would definitely show that he is knowledgeable. Shin young lady is after all in her budding years, and when such a young lady met a talented and good-looking teacher, it would be the first awakening of love, and her heart would be in love. Who would have thought that the teacher is a hypocrite who visits the brothel? In a fit of anger, Shun young lady simply led her subordinate to buy that courtesan's brand. Wait, Gao Yang asked, why Shin Miao likes Pei Lang but buy Lu Ying's brand? Ji Yushu thought hard for a while before replying, most likely it is because Pei Lang could not afford to buy Lu Ying's brand. So Shin young lady let the servants buy Lu Ying's brand. Pei Lang could not even be compared to a servant, so he must be angry in his heart. Shun young lady wants to anger Pei Lang to death. The more Ji Yushu spoke, the more excited he became, until his saliva flew and he almost climbed onto the table. You all look. Pei Lang had seriously injured young Miss Shun. You're just a young lady, yet you're willing to throw away 1,000 pieces of gold for your beauty. Gao Yang held his forehead with a headache. Ji Yushu, did you listen to some inexplicable drama in the brothel again? You guys have fun. I'll leave first. Xie Jingxing stood up expressionlessly and glanced at Ji Yushu. If you are bored and the tower prison lacks people, then pack up and go over with Tai Yi. Ji Yushu immediately became like a frosted eggplant and did not make a sound. On the other side, in the Firefly hut, Mo Qing was still sitting at the table drinking tea as usual. Lu Ying had now completely given up on Mo Qing. Previously, she still wanted to conquer this man, but now she did not even have any thoughts of conquering and had completely lost her temper. Thus, she did not even comb her makeup and walked over to pick up the silver ingot that Imo-Ching placed on the table and put it into the box. She then sat opposite Imo-Ching and poured a cup of tea to take a sip before saying in a lukewarm manner, "Many thanks to Gentleman Imo for supporting Luing as usual, so that Luing would not be unable to eat in such a bad time." When the other young ladies were snatched away by the new Persian dancers, only Imo-Ching continued to support her. The young ladies in the building were extremely envious and jealous of Lu Ying, but did not know that in Lu Ying's eyes, Imo-Ching was just an eccentric person. Chapter 359. Most likely Imo-Ching liked to take the money and stare blankly in the brothel. Lu Ying also did not intend to chat with Imo-Ching. This Imo-Ching had come over so many times, but he never spoke a word to her. If it was not that he would speak to the young lady downstairs, Lu Ying would think that Imo-Ching was a mute. But today, Imo-Ching had spoken to her for the first time. Imo-Ching said, "It is not me." She was too surprised that Lu Ying could only stare at him. The one who gave you the money is not me," Imo-Ching said. Lu Ying was puzzled. "What money? My master wants me to come here every 3 days to look for you, and give you the money and do nothing." This was most likely the longest sentence that Imo-Ching had said since he came to Baoxianglu, but when the words were spoken, Lu Ying's eyes suddenly became vigilant. She stood up. "Who is your master?" Imo-Ching shook his head. "Cannot say." "You." Lu Ying glared at him. "Master said that after a few more days, she will come and see you." Imo-Ching said, "Do not receive other guests for the time being." Lu Ying smiled. "Eldest brother, I do not know who your master is and do not know what he wants to do, but I am a young lady of Baoxianglu, and now that the economy is so bad, I am not the top card that was just made famous. If I do not receive other guests, what would I eat or drink? You will support me." Imo-Ching did not say anything. Seeing that Imo-Ching did not say anything, Lu Ying became even angrier and a nameless fire rose in her heart. At this time, no matter if it was sincere or not, other males would still say a few comforting words, "I will support you." Even if it was to deceive others, no one would take anyone's words seriously in the brothel. This Imo-Ching was good. He was simply a blockhead and loved to be serious, not even willing to say a few good words to deceive others. Once he got angry, he wanted to coax others, but just as he opened his mouth, Lu Ying became silent again. Imo-Ching was indeed not a person in the brothel, and he himself said that he was only acting on his master's orders. Thinking of this, she felt that it was meaningless to ask him about these things. Imo-Ching saw Lu Ying's expression changing and was somewhat baffled. He hesitated for a moment before saying the words that Shun Miao did not instruct him to say. He said, "My master is a good person. You, don't be afraid." Lu Ying was surprised for a moment and looked at Imo-Ching, but Imo-Ching lowered his head to drink his tea. Inexplicably, Lu Ying's mood became better and she said, "Why should I believe you?" Imo-Ching, that night, there were no stars and no moon. Shin Miao stayed in Luo Shuiyan's room and chatted with Luo Shuiyan before preparing to return to her courtyard. On the way, Jingzhe told Shin Miao about the news that she had inquired during the day. "Young lady, one heard that the Jing family will set off for Suzhou this afternoon, and before leaving, they took away all the valuable furnishings in Rongjingtang's side courtyard. This is really like a robber's action." Old Foreign was so angry that she almost had a stroke again. This "stroke again" was said with a hint of mockery. Everyone knew that when old Shun Foreign was flustered and exasperated, she would involuntarily have a stroke. But now it could be considered that she had met her match. The shameless one had met an even more shameless one. Speaking of which, one really admired the Jing family's face. To be able to take away Rongjingtang's things with such ease, it was really strange to the extreme. One did not think that the Jing family would speak in such a dignified manner and solemnly vow to seek an explanation for Biao young lady, but now they returned to Suzhou with their tails between their legs, so Biao young lady did not care. Knowing that Biao young lady would not have a good ending in the Sun family, but did not think of any way at all. Originally they said it so ruthlessly, but it was only to ask for more money. Jingzhe said, "Commoners do not fight with officials." Shun Miao's lips slightly hooked up. One think that the Jing family also know that they have caused a big disaster. Not a good person. Jingzhe's lips twitched. Shin Miao declined to comment. The Jing family rushed back to Suzhou through the night, but how could they rush back in time? Sun Tianzhong was not a soft persimmon. Initially, when Shan Xiu had an accident, Jing Chu escaped, but the rest of the Jing family did not escape. Sun Tianzhong was never a soft-hearted person, so no one knew what happened on the way back to Suzhou. Just as they walked to the courtyard, Shun Miao was about to push the door open to enter when she suddenly paused and swept a glance at the window. Jingzhe, Shun Miao said, go and boil the water first. I want to bathe. Make it hotter. Jingzhe was startled for a moment before nodding her head in agreement. Shun Miao pushed the door open and walked in. She walked past the outer hall, past the folding screen, and walked into her own boudoir before closing the door. The light of the oil lamp swayed slightly, and one could see a person sitting crookedly in front of the table. His robe seemed to be flowing dark gold, making the darkness in the room shine brightly. He propped his head up with one hand, and the other hand was flipping through the books on Shan Miao's table in boredom. When he heard movement, he casually turned his head and revealed a handsome face with red lips and white teeth. Why did you return so late? Xie Jingxing was somewhat dissatisfied. I did not seem to have invited you. Shun Miao looked at him calmly. Little Marquis Xie, I waited for you for a long time. Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows. I am already hungry. Shun Miao said, get lost. Chapter 360. Get lost. Hearing that, Xie Jingxing's lips hooked up and turned his head to look at Shin Miao with interest. Long time no see. Your temper is getting more and more irritable. Shin Miao sat down in front of the table and said coldly, you still like to come uninvited as usual. If Xie Jingxing was seen in her room, one did not know how much trouble it would cause. But this person always liked to do such things, as if there was danger in his bones. Shin Miao had already decided to stay away from Xie Jingxing as the other person had too many secrets, and now Xie Jingxing came over himself. How could she not be angry? Passing by this place and conveniently came over to see you. Xie Jingxing shrugged his shoulders and changed to a more comfortable position. Today he was wearing plain clothes with a white collar. It was the season of snow, but because of his outstanding brows, the room was filled with the feeling of spring. He stroked his chin and said, there is one more thing to ask you. Speak. Shin Miao was not willing to say a word more to him. When Xie Jingxing saw Shin Miao's attitude, he was not annoyed and said, is there anyone in the residence that Shin Yuan trusts? Hearing that, Shin Miao looked at Xie Jingxing with some surprise. She did not think that the person that Xie Jingxing wanted to ask was Shin Yuan. Even though she was not clear of Xie Jingxing's purpose, she still said, no. Shin Yuan's return to the capital was short, and he is not close to the people in the residence. Why did you ask him? Just came over from his courtyard. Xie Jingxing said lazily, did not find anything so came over to ask? Shin Miao's eyes drooped as she pondered. Could it be that Xie Jingxing wanted to find something at Shen Yuan's place but could not find it? So he thought that Shen Yuan had passed the thing to someone he trusted. Thus he inquired from her. What exactly are you looking for? Shin Miao asked. Is it the same as the thing in Prince Yu Residence's secret chamber? When the words were said, the room suddenly became quiet for a moment. For a moment, Shin Miao could feel the biting cold air that burst out from Xie Jingxing's side. But that dangerous atmosphere only lasted for a moment, and very quickly Xie Jingxing laughed. When he laughed, he was as elegant as jade, but that pair of peach blossom eyes could not conceal the sharpness. Xie Jingxing did not answer Shin Miao's words but asked, these days you are also living well. One heard that the second household of the Shun family is about to be defeated. Little Marquis knows the matters of the Shun residence like the back of his hand. If one did not know, one would think that you were from the Shun residence. Shin Miao ridiculed. Xie Jingxing spread out his hands. No choice. The Shun residence's guards are like decorations, and the things that happened were interesting, so it would be hard to not know. He sized up Shin Miao. It is just that I have underestimated your ruthlessness. You can give it a try too. Xie Jingxing looked at her with a smile. I don't have that much time. It sounds like you are very busy. Shin Miao stared at him. But you have so much free time to visit other people's mansions. When she said this, she showed a little anger. Xie Jingxing could always easily draw out the little emotions in her heart. If Jingzhe, Guyu and the rest were to see this, they would definitely be shocked by Shen Miao's current expression, because it had been a long time since Shen Miao had revealed such frank emotions. Whether it was anger or annoyance, these were all things that the previous Shen Miao would have. Xie Jingxing said, "Young lady's temper is always so heavy." Shen Miao said in a bad mood, "The questions have already been asked and you are still not leaving?" Xie Jingxing stood up and patted his clothes. He really opened the back window and planned to leave from the window when he suddenly thought of something and turned back to look at her strangely before asking, "Almost forgot to ask you. Shen Miao, do you admire Pei Lang?" Shen Miao. Before she could speak, she saw Xie Jingxing looking at her from head to toe with disdain in his eyes. It should also be useless. His figure disappeared in a blink of an eye. Chapter 361. This bastard. Shen Miao almost ground her teeth, but once saw Jingzhen knocking on the door from the outside. "Young lady, the water has started to boil. This servant will help you put in the spices." Upon entering, she asked curiously, "Why is young lady standing in front of the window? Be careful not to catch a cold." Shen Miao withdrew her gaze. "Nothing. I just chased away a wild cat." "A wild cat?" Jingzhe smiled. "It is common for wildcats to appear in this season, but they only disturb one's dreams. One will chase them out tomorrow to save trouble. It is better to add arsenic." Shen Miao said, "Clean death? Jingzhe was somewhat puzzled. At the other end of the Shen residence, Wan Yinyang's eyes were filled with worry and seemed to be somewhat resentful as she said to Shan Dongling, "One do not know what fifth young lady said to Foreign that day, but these days the servants in Kai Yun Yuan said that Foreign's illness is getting better day by day." Now that he recognized him, he didn't throw a tantrum. Now that he was able to do things, he even asked the servant beside him to cook porridge for his master. It seemed like he wanted to regain his master's favor. If that day really comes, I'm afraid that it will be another day of suffering for us. Wan Yinyang was somewhat complaining. It seems that fifth young lady really want to help Foreign and even treat Foreign's illness. Shin Dongling was combing her long hair in front of the table. When she let her long hair down, it just so happened that she was facing the light, and the pale color on her face eased up a bit. Her face became even sharper, and her eyes were big. She was a vivid little beauty. She said, "Yinyang is worrying too much. No matter how great fifth sister's ability is, it is impossible for her to bring the dying back to life. It seems that Madam has always been pretending to be crazy." Fifth younger sister said something to her and made her think it through and stop pretending. "What?" Wan Yinyang was shocked. "Linger, you said that Foreign had been acting crazy all along. Then for so long, Master has been taking care of us. Isn't it all seen by Madam? Once Madam has the chance, she will definitely not let us off. What's there to worry about, Aunt?" Shun Dongling casually combed her hair with a silver comb as she said, "Because of Dejiejier and second brother's matter, Father already looks down on Foreign. Even if Madam really woke up, Father would at most be tolerant towards her on the surface, but in his heart, he would definitely be disgusted. It is impossible for Foreign to regain her previous position, and Foreign herself knows this. Yinyang can relax." Wan Yinyang was puzzled. Since Foreign knew that Master would not forgive her, why did she not continue to pretend to be crazy? What did Fifth Miss say to her that made her change her mind? Madam has nothing but seventh younger brother now. Fifth younger sister is probably making a fuss about seventh younger brother's matter. Yinyang must also work hard to give father a son. No matter if it's a bastard son or a legitimate son, as long as you give birth to a son, you will be able to stand firm here in the future. No one will dare to step on your head. Wan Yinyang smiled bitterly. How would she not want to give birth to a son? In the early years, she was completely suppressed by Ran Wan Yun, and if she did not give birth to Shin Dongling, who was a daughter, both mother and daughter would not be able to live until now. Now Ran Wan Yun was crazy, but Shan Gue had always been fickle in relationships, and she was not a young female, so how could she keep Shin Gue's heart? How could they coincidentally give birth to a son? As her thoughts ran wild, Wan Yinyang diverted the topic. What is the use of saying all these? Linger might as well guess what fifth young lady is trying to do. Helping Foreign is the same as going against us. That might not be so. Shen Dongling shook her head. fifth younger sister is not a simple person, and currently our position in the second household is not high. Even so, it is already very good. In short, do not get involved in these matters and live your own life. Otherwise, one would accidentally invite trouble upon oneself. Shinrochio nodded her head. Correct? Most likely it is because of this point that eldest brother and eldest Saw are so sure. Shinrochio said, "It has been peaceful for so many years. Why is there a need to separate at this juncture?" She could not help but think of Shun Miao. Ever since Shun Miao's temperament changed, many things in the Shun residence had quietly changed. In the past, Shin Xian and wife treated the rest of the Shin family well, but that was because Shun Miao treated them well. Now that Shin Miao showed her dissatisfaction, Shin Xian and wife's attitude immediately changed. Shin Wan sighed as Shinrochio asked, "Master, is there any leeway to turn this matter around?" Shin Wan shook his head. "If it were us, we wouldn't be able to accept it either." Big Brother and his family were people who couldn't tolerate a grain of sand in their eyes, and the one they valued the most was Xiaowu. The Jing family and mother conspired against Qiu'er and Xiaowu, which was a taboo of eldest brother. They were already being merciful by only separating from the family. If it was eldest brother's temper in the past, I'm afraid he would have flipped this Shun residence upside down. But, Chen Ruoqiu said, "It's not a good thing for us to separate now." Shan Wan looked out of the window. Now that the second household has suffered heavy losses, second older brothers and my career are blocked. In the past, we could still rely on eldest brother's influence, but once the family is separated, everyone would know that the Shun family is not in harmony, and to curry favor with eldest brother, they would not associate with us. The Shin family's road would only be more difficult. Not only that, the money in the public purse. Shinrochio reminded. In the past, Shin Xian's rewards were numerous, but he was unable to spend it all year round in the northwest region, so he handed it all over to the public purse. Old Shin Foreign spent money extravagantly, and Ren Wanyun occasionally had to subsidize it, so he lived like this. Now that the family was separated, even if Shin Xian did not want the assets that the old general left behind, their days would only get more difficult. Chapter 363. If it is only like this, then it is fine. Shun Wan's eyes flashed a trace of gloominess. After the separation of the family, with eldest brother's military strength and reputation, he would only get better, and at the end he would suppress us. Comparing the two powers, one would have to reach this step. Shinrochio's heart was shocked when she heard it. She had been married to the Shin residence for so many years, and naturally knew of the Shun residence's appearance. Shin Xian and wife were not in the residence all year round, so they did not know, but she and Ren Wanyun were well aware of it. In this Shin residence, Shin Xian and Shun Gue brothers did not crawl out from the same mother's womb, so naturally it was not sincere. The better Shin Xian lived, the worse the other two households would be. There would be a day when everyone would be in opposition, but one did not think that this situation would come so quickly. "Master, even if it is for your error, one cannot let us be suppressed." Shinrochio massaged his shoulders, but how to deal with them? Now that eldest brother is wary of us, it would not be that easy to take action. Shinwan shook his head. Moreover, his soldiers are not ordinary, so it would be harder to find loopholes. One must wait for an opportunity. Shinwan said, "The most urgent matter is to find a good family for Yuer. Pay attention these days." Chunrochio probed, "Master, His Highness Prince Ding. First, one must not have any ideas on Prince Ding," Shinwan said sharply. "Just after the matter of Yuaner, the people in court are afraid of getting involved with the Shin family, and one need to pay more attention to the princes. If one were to think of Prince Ding at this time, Prince Ding would not be happy." Chunrochio nodded her head. "This concubine understands. Master should also rest early." On the morning of the second day, Shin Miao had just eaten when she saw Shuangjiang panting as she ran in. Upon entering the room, she said, "Young lady, something happened. Speak slowly if there is something to say. Why are you so anxious?" Gu Yu reprimanded. Shuangjiang stuck out her tongue but still could not hold it back and spilled everything out. "A few days ago, did the Jing family not set off back to Suzhou?" Today the officials from that side said that the Jing family met with bandits on the way back and were all killed by the bandits. Knowing that the Jing family and Old Foreign have some relations, the officials then came to inform. Shuangjiang patted her chest and said with lingering fear, "Now this bandit is getting more and more rampant. They dare to kill people in broad daylight and did not leave a single person alive. If one knew it was like this, the Jing family would regret coming to the Ding capital." Xin Miao's eyes drooped down. Whether the Jing family was silenced by bandits or not, it would depend on one's thoughts. But Sun Miao knew that Sun Tianzheng's methods had always been swift and decisive, just like in the court. This matter started because of Jing Chu and Sun Kainan lost his life. How could Sun Tianzheng be willing? Xin Miao believed that if it was possible, Sun Tianzheng could not wait to silence the entire Xin family. But the Xin family wasn't the Jing family. The Jing family would still have the same ending as in the previous lifetime, losing their lives because of Jing Chu's greed. Now that Jing Chu was still in Sun Tianzheng's hands, Sun Tianzheng would not let Jing Chu die easily. To live in despair like this was perhaps more painful than death. But this had nothing to do with her anymore. Xin Miao said to Gu Yu, "What about the prepared things?" Gu Yu said, "It is in the chest, but..." Gu Yu was somewhat hesitant. "Young lady, you really want, go and get it?" Xin Miao interrupted her words. After an hour, 4 people walked out of the western courtyard side door of the Shen residence. Among the 3 of them, the leader was a young gentleman with delicate features. He was wearing a moon-white robe and a hat, and could be considered as an elegant gentleman. It was just that he was a little short, but he was somewhat adorable like a carved jade. His pair of bright eyes were rarely clear. With this kind of looks, he would be sought after even in a small brothel. Chapter 364. Following closely behind him were 2 people dressed as attendants. But when he walked, he was a little clumsy and awkward. Behind the follower was a guard. Compared to the 3 of them, he was much taller. "Do not be afraid," Xin Miao said. "Be more courageous and do not give yourself away." These 3 people were not others but Xin Miao, Jingzhe, Gu Yu, and Imoqing. Jingzhe and Gu Yu were not used to wearing male's clothing, so they had a sullen face and were somewhat afraid, but Xin Miao was very calm, which made Imoqing's heart have some misgivings. However, she did not know that when she was a hostage in the Qin state, she was teased by the royal family. They made her dress up as a man for several months. Now that he was acting, he looked very lively. When the 3 of them boarded the carriage, Imoqing personally drove the carriage and Gu Yu asked Xin Miao, "Young lady, are we really going to Bao Xianglu?" "Of course." "But," Gu Yu said, "we have words that cannot be said outside. If someone sees young lady visiting a brothel..." She could not continue because Gu Yu did not know what would happen when a female visited a brothel. Bao Xianglu is a business place, and a business place only needs to pay money. Those who visit the brothel do not care about etiquette and morals, and it is originally a place to indulge in debauchery. No one would notice if they were to put on a show. Jingzhe and Gu Yu looked at each other and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. Xin Miao's ideas were very big, and once she decided on something, even 9 bulls would not be able to pull her back. Moreover, there would always be all kinds of high-sounding reasons. Now that he had come this far, he could only wait and see. In the elegant room of Kuai Hualu, someone lifted the curtain and walked in. Ji Yushu said, "Third older brother Xie, you came just in time. There is something to tell you, Prince Ding." "Huh," Gao Yang suddenly exclaimed. His hand that was holding the wine cup paused as he muttered to himself, "Why is it different this time?" "What's different?" Xie Jingxing said as he sat down by the window. He poured himself a cup of tea and followed Gao Yang's gaze. Below Bao Xianglu, a horse carriage stopped and a few people came down. The person in the lead was Imoqing. Behind Imoqing, there were 3 youths that followed. In the past, the one with the surname Imo always came and went alone. Why are there so many people here today? Is this also Xin Miao's order? Gao Yang propped his chin up and sized him up. "Let me see." Ji Yushu stretched his neck to take a look, and a flash of inspiration appeared. Could it be that Shun young lady is actually using money to reward servants who do well? If the servants did a good job, they would be rewarded with a day trip to Bao Xianglu. I also want to be a servant and shun young ladies' residence. Step aside. Gao Yang pushed Ji Yushu's head away and said, Why do I feel that these few people look somewhat familiar? Before he finished his words, he saw Xie Jingxing spurt out a mouthful of tea. Third brother. Ji Yushu, who was sprayed all over, jumped up in a flurry and said angrily as he tidied up his clothes, What are you doing? Xie Jingxing ignored him and stared at the few people downstairs in surprise. They actually came by themselves? Myself? Gao Yang caught on to the meaning behind his words and looked down carefully. When he saw it clearly, he almost fell over on his back. Who else could it be if it was not Xin Miao, who was the leader that was carved from jade? Under the heavens, there were really females who dressed as males to visit brothels. If one did not see it with one's own eyes, Gao Yang would have thought that such things would only appear in dramas. Xin Miao followed Imo Qing into Bao Xianglu. When the young lady at the door saw Imo Qing, she went up to greet him with a smile. Lord Imo, it is better to pick young lady Lu Ying. Imo Qing nodded his head. That young lady then seemed to notice the few people behind Imo Qing and hesitated for a moment. These few? Chapter 365. Together with me, Imo Qing said. That young lady was surprised for a moment before thinking of something and looked at Imo Qing mischievously. One did not think that Master Imo would have this kind of taste. No matter, the more people there are, the livelier it is. When Jingzhe and Guyu heard it, their faces immediately turned red and Imo Qing also felt somewhat uncomfortable. The calmest person in the group was only Xin Miao. That young lady led them to Lu Ying's little building. Imo Qing had almost become a frequent visitor of Bao Xianglu, and there was no young lady who did not know of him, thus it was not strange at all. It was just that it was rare to see such delicate and pretty gentlemen like Shan Miao and the rest, especially Shen Miao, who looked like she was carved from jade. From time to time, there would be young ladies who would look over with a smile. When they reached Lu Ying's little building, the young lady who led the way knocked on the door and spoke. Lu Ying, Master Imo is here to see you. Finishing, she then said to Imo Qing and the rest, This servant will go down first. Imo Qing pushed the door open and walked in. There was a female sitting in front of the dressing mirror with clothes loosely draped over her body, and her black hair was like a waterfall as she was dressing up in front of the mirror. Hearing the commotion, she did not even turn her head back as she said, You came early today. Jingzhe and Guyu looked at Imo Qing strangely before Imo Qing coughed twice. Not only me. Lu Ying's hand that was dressing paused, and when she turned her head over, she was first startled when she saw Xin Miao and the rest before a trace of anger climbed up her pretty face. What is the meaning of this? Not waiting for Imo Qing to finish, Lu Ying sneered. If you want to play like this, it is possible, but you have to pay twice the amount of money. When the words were said, not only Jingzhe and Guyu, even Shan Miao looked at Imo Qing strangely. Imo Qing was somewhat embarrassed as he did not know why Lu Ying, who treated him with a much better attitude a few days ago, flew into a rage today, and that kind of cold alienation started to appear again. Young lady Lu Ying, this one is Imo Qing's master. Xin Miao opened her mouth to break the deadlock and smiled gently. We are not here to play today. Jingzhe and Guyu wanted to cover their eyes and could not wait to pretend that they did not know. Hearing the word mistress, Lu Ying was stunned and her eyes vigilantly sized up Shan Miao from head to toe. Xin Miao walked over and Jingzhe and Guyu quickly moved the stool in front of the table closer to Lu Ying and waited for Shan Miao to sit down. You are the one who let Imo Qing come to my shop every day? Lu Ying asked. Xin Miao nodded. Lu Ying supported her chin with one hand and her gaze suddenly became flirtatious. This servant does not understand gentlemen's actions. Could it be that you have fallen in love with me? Imo Qing looked up at the sky. Lu Ying was after all a female in a brothel, and when she did such a brothel, it could be said that she had reached the point of perfection. Jingzhe and Guyu revealed a look of disdain. Xin Miao looked at her. What does young lady Lu Ying think? Lu Ying carefully sized up Xin Miao and her gaze paused for a moment before suddenly smiling. This young lady wants to play the fake phoenix trick in the play script? She actually saw through Xin Miao's female identity. Xin Miao was not surprised. She was born delicate and pretty, and when she was dressed up as a male, her skin was as white as jade and her brows were similar. She was excessively delicate when she walked, so when one looked seriously, naturally it would not escape the eyes of others. I want to redeem your freedom, Shin Miao said. Lu Ying could not laugh anymore. She had been sold to Bao Xianglu for quite some time, and now naturally it could not be compared to that time when she was extremely popular. There were fewer and fewer people asking about her, not to mention spending a large sum of money to redeem her freedom. Lu Ying does not understand young lady's meaning. I was fortunate enough to obtain a handkerchief, and it was a rare double-sided embroidery. There were only a few dozen people in the entire country who knew how to do double-sided embroidery. Shin Miao said, after many inquiries, one came to know that it was done by young lady Lu Ying. You. Lu Ying's hands tightened. How did you know that it was done by me? Shin Miao waved her hands. It is not important how I know. The important thing is that I have an embroidery workshop and lack an embroidery lady. Does young lady Lu Ying have the interest to manage the embroidery workshop for me? Lu Ying looked at her incredulously and suddenly laughed like a flower. Young lady, could it be that you want me to turn over a new leaf? Jingzhe and Gu Yu were somewhat dissatisfied with Lu Ying's attitude at this moment, and Mo Qing also slightly frowned. How many prostitutes longed to wash themselves clean, and Lu Ying was still young. If she washed herself clean, she might have a good future. I was sold to this place from the start. Lu Ying's face was frivolous. What I learned is bedroom skills and only know how to serve and please a male. Young lady, let me manage the embroidery workshop and sell hard labor. I am not able to live through that kind of bitter days. Not afraid that I will collapse the embroidery workshop? Shin Miao stared at her and smiled gently. Whether it collapses or not is my matter, but whether to do it or not is your matter. She played it down. It is just that. This matter is dispensable to me, but to you, it is the only way to leave this place. There are thousands of people in the world and tens of thousands of industries. Everyone has their own way of living. To me, one do not feel that a female in a brothel is lower than others, but the world's view is so. Shin Miao said, just like my Gardemo. She is also a slave, but no one would look down on her. My personal maids, some people would even envy them. The world is like this, and people are divided into 3, 6, and 9 ranks. Who would not want to be a person above others, and who would want to be ridiculed by others every day? He was so engrossed that he did not even know when someone had come to his side. A light cough interrupted his train of thought. He saw 4 people standing in front of him. The young man in the lead was dressed in a moon-white robe. He had delicate features and looked like he was carved out of jade. Who knew which family he was from? At this moment, she looked at him with a faint smile on her lips. Pei Lang was stunned. He felt that this young man looked familiar. The young man nodded at him. Mr. Pei. Shin Miao. Pei Lang's eyes widened slightly. He looked at the attendants and guards behind Shin Miao, and looked at Shin Miao again. Most likely he was somewhat shocked and said, why are you dressed like this? It was not rare for a female to dress up as a male. In Mingqi, many young ladies would occasionally dress up as a male for convenience, and when they dress up, they would have a different kind of beauty. But Shin Miao. Pei Lang looked at the handsome youth in front of him and did not know what to say for a moment. I just came out from Bao Xianglu, Shin Miao said. Pei Lang coughed all of a sudden, and his face turned red. It was not uncommon for a woman to dress up as a man, but this was the first time he had heard of a woman dressed up as a man visiting a brothel. But Shin Miao still had a very magnanimous look, without a trace of shyness. Shin Miao suddenly took a step forward and moved closer to Pei Lang. With a pa sound, she opened the fan in her hands and covered both of their faces. She softly said at the other end of the fan, everyone said that the young ladies of Bao Xianglu are the most beautiful in the world, so I specially went for a stroll. Recently, there are many new Persian dancers, and each of them are incomparably fragrant. Even if Pei Lang was calm and composed outside, and was able to deal with high officials and noble people with ease, but facing Shin Miao's slightly ambiguous actions, he was somewhat at a loss. Not to mention that Shin Miao was talking about all these messy things. It made him suddenly have an illusion, as if the person in front of him was really that noble gentleman who walked on horseback and slept with flowers and willows, and was discussing with him which family's dancers were more beautiful. Chapter 367. Nonsense. Remembering his identity as a teacher, Pei Lang squeezed out 2 words from between his teeth. Shun Miao gently smiled and her eyes curved like a crescent moon, almost like an orchid. She said, "But I have ordered young Lady Lu Ying's card." As soon as these words came out, Pei Lang's body stiffened. Shun Miao kept her folding fan and looked at him with a smile. "I see that Gentleman Pei has been looking at Lu Ying's little building for a long time. Is it that you are also yearning for young Lady Lu Ying?" Pei Lang stared at Shun Miao, and his calm expression suddenly turned fierce. Shun Miao remained unmoved and continued to smile happily as she pointed to Kuai Hua Lu. "Since Mr. Pei is also interested in young Lady Lu Ying, why not go in with me for a cup of wine and chat about beauties?" Her actions were obviously frivolous, but there was a kind of irresistible majesty about her. She folded her fan horizontally in front of her chest and went upstairs on her own. She left a sentence from afar: "Good wine and chatting with beautiful women is the happiest thing in the world." Even though Jingjia, Gu Yu, and Imoqing Trio did not understand the meaning of Shun Miao's words, they had never refuted Shun Miao's decisions and immediately followed in. Pei Lang stood there alone. After a moment of hesitation, he made up his mind and followed her in. At the window seat upstairs, Ji Yushu suddenly jumped up. "Look! I already said that Shin young lady admires that Pei Lang and went in such a big circle to pick young Lady Lu Ying's name. It was also that she could speak with Pei Lang today." Gao Yang ignored him and secretly guessed. Just now she used the fan to cover her face. What did she say to Pei Lang? Gao Yang shook his head. She used the fan to cover it. Could it be that she knows that you can read lips? When he said that, Gao Yang looked at Xie Jingxing. Xie Jingxing shrugged his shoulders, indicating that he did not agree or disagree. Speaking of which, just now the action of Shin young lady waving the fan was so elegant that it was even more outstanding than me. Ji Yushu sighed. How could such a beautiful person fancy a poor scholar? Even if you follow me, it's still better than that pretty boy who can't even afford to visit a brothel. Xie Jingxing stood up and Ji Yushu asked, "Where are you going?" "Of course it's to listen to what they have to say." Xie Jingxing smiled meaningfully. "I want to see what kind of chess piece Pei Lang is." In the elegant room of Kuai Hua Lu, Imoqing stood by the door while Jingjia and Guyu stood on both sides with their heads lowered, as if they did not exist. At the table, Shun Miao was pouring wine. The wine was Lu wine. Its color was like amber and it smelled fragrant. This wine wasn't intoxicating. As long as one's alcohol tolerance wasn't too bad, drinking a little would be fine. Shun Miao poured 2 cups, and her posture when pouring the wine was very elegant. Her fingers grabbed the handle of the wine pot, and when the crystal-clear wine was poured into the small jade cup, the sound was very pleasing to the ear. Pei Lang watched helplessly as Shun Miao pushed a cup of wine in front of him and said with a smile, "Gentlemen, please drink." Shun Miao. Pei Lang directly called her by her name, and his expression had not eased since he entered. He said, "What exactly do you want to do?" "Mr. Pei is actually so anxious to talk about beauties without wine. Isn't it like a cow chewing peonies?" Shun Miao looked at him calmly. Pei Lang was dumbfounded by her words. He had stayed in Guangwantang for several years, and the people that he met were all respectful to him. Even the most mischievous student would not speak to him in such a frivolous tone. If it was other people, it would be all right, but it was Shun Miao. Pei Lang always felt that Shun Miao was not a frivolous person, and speaking like this made him unable to figure out the other party's background. Seeing that Pei Lang did not speak for a long time, Shun Miao gently laughed. She said, "Just joking with Mr. Pei. Why is Mr. Pei so nervous?" Chapter 368. When she said those words, her eyes were clear, but there seemed to be some mischievousness. It was clearly the appearance of an innocent young female, but in a moment there was a kind of unknowingly charming charm. Pei Lang's gaze slightly paused. "This wine is Lu wine." Shun Miao picked up the wine cup and raised it towards Pei Lang. Pei Lang's expression suddenly changed, but Shun Miao did not seem to notice his expression and said slowly, "The wine brewed in the Lu Qi region is also amber in color." The Lu wine in Kuai Hua Lu must have been transported over from the Lu Qi region. Pei Lang looked at her and suddenly picked up the wine cup on the table and drank the wine in one gulp. This wine is not intoxicating, Xin Miao said with a smile. Otherwise, if others see it, they would think that Teacher Pei is a wine jar. Her tone was coquettish, but her words made Pei Lang's palms slightly moist. She said, speaking of which, the people of Lu are good at drinking wine and drink from jars. Just now Teacher Pei's manner was somewhat like a Lu person. Pei Lang pursed his lips and did not speak, but his gentle eyes were somewhat distorted. Xin Miao supported her cheek with one hand, and her face was slightly flushed from the wine. Even if she was not intoxicated, there was a faint blush on her face, and when she squinted her eyes, she looked like a crabapple sleeping in spring. But because she was dressed as a male, it was refreshing and pretty, and there was a different kind of charm. She said, I remember that 10 years ago, there was a prefectural magistrate of Lu who also seemed to have the surname Pei. If one did not know, one would think that Teacher Pei and that person were from the same family. Pei Lang suddenly placed the wine cup on the table, and at the same time, Mo Qing glared and his right hand pressed on the sword at his waist. Unfortunately, that prefectural magistrate Pei's residence was involved in an old matter of the previous dynasty, and his entire family was beheaded by His Majesty. In the entire residence, the males were all executed and the daughters were exiled to be prostitutes for officials. Xin Miao could not stop laughing. One heard that prefectural magistrate Pei's residence had a pair of outstanding children, and they were still young but died in this storm. Pei Lang's lips were slightly trembling as he asked word by word, Who exactly are you? Sure. Xin Miao gestured for her to keep quiet and drank another cup of wine. Her snow-white face flushed red as she said, Actually, I was fortunate to hear of a secret. Seeing that Gentleman Pei is also surnamed Pei, there is no harm in sharing it with Gentleman Pei. That prefectural magistrate Pei's residence had the ability to send a pair of children to escape and avoid disaster. Unfortunately, the officials were hot on their heels, so they could only protect one person. Hence, prefectural magistrate Pei managed to protect his son, but his daughter was captured by the officials. She regretfully shook her head. The government officials are like wolves and tigers. They never show mercy to the families of sinners. That little girl was caught. How could she have a good ending? Xin Miao sighed. If I were to say, that prefectural magistrate Pei knew that his daughter would fall into the tiger's mouth and her life would be worse than death, but he still pushed his daughter out. It is somewhat heartless. Pei Lang closed his eyes, a pained expression on his face. Mr. Pei, you must be feeling the same way. Xin Miao smiled as she looked at him, but one would think that this has nothing to do with Mr. Pei, because Mr. Pei is not from Lu. Mr. Pei is a merchant that was born in the Ding capital. Speaking of these, it is only because this Lu wine is intoxicating, and one was momentarily sentimental. The gentleness on Pei Lang's face suddenly disappeared and was replaced with a strong vigilance and precaution. He said, This is General Shun's intention? Xin Miao shook her head. My father dotes on me and gave me an embroidery workshop. The embroidery workshop is lacking an embroidery lady. Xin Miao dragged her voice. One heard that more than 10 years ago, prefectural magistrate Pei's eldest daughter knew double-sided embroidery since young. Coincidentally, this Bao Xiang Lu's young lady Lu Ying also knew double-sided embroidery. I thought that since both of them were reduced to prostitution and knew double-sided embroidery, perhaps young lady Lu Ying and that sinner's young lady had some relation. As for me, I had some compassion and saved her from prostitution. Xin Miao looked at Pei Lang and said, Mr. Pei, do you think that this student did the right thing? Chapter 369. She referred to herself as a student. Her black hair was wrapped in a man's official hat. Her smiling appearance made her look like a handsome young man. But in those clear eyes, there were deep secrets and intentions that no one could see through or guess at. She pretended to be charming and quick-witted, but she vividly displayed the hidden daggers behind the smiles of the officials in the official world. Dealing with her was like walking on a tightrope at the edge of a cliff. There were hidden meanings in her words, and it was hard to tell whether she was a friend or foe. Pei Lang tilted his head. What do you think? Xin Miao smiled. Her smile was pure, as if she was really happy that she had done a good deed. She said, I think it's very good. Even if that prefectural magistrate Pei's son found out about elder sister's whereabouts and personally came to redeem elder sister's freedom, based on Miss Pei's resentment towards prefectural magistrate Pei and her own temperament, she would not be willing. Instead, you'll ruin your life. Pei Lang did not speak. Some people in the world are originally jade, but after being mixed in a pile of rocks for a long time, they become rocks. But there were some people who hid their arrogance in their bones. Even if they were ground to dust, the arrogance in their bones would not be shaken. It was said that although prefectural magistrate Pei had committed a crime, he was an arrogant person. Presumably, the son and daughter that he taught would not be inferior to him. You say, Shen Miao looked at Pei Lang. Would that young lady rather live with the identity of a noble lady who has fallen into prostitution or live with the identity of a prostitute who has washed herself clean? After saying so much, Pei Lang sneered. What do you want me to do? Mr. Pei, you're smart. I knew I couldn't hide it from you. One little clue reveals the general trend, and one can understand the meaning of a song. That's what they say. Shen Miao was not stingy with her compliments to Pei Lang before saying, Gentleman Pei is a talented person and has knowledge in his chest. Why not enter officialdom? Shen Miao, Pei Lang suddenly shouted. He did not know that Shen Miao's words had poked his sore spot as he suddenly became agitated, and even Jingjia and Guyu looked at him. Pei Lang said furiously, Don't even think about it. Gentleman Pei need not be anxious and might as well listen to me calmly. Shen Miao smiled. Perhaps Gentleman Pei was frightened by my story just now, feeling that in the officialdom, if one is not careful, one would implicate the entire residence, and it would be dangerous and full of misfortune. Moreover, after entering officialdom, one would not be as comfortable as being a carefree gentleman. Pei Lang's expression gradually recovered, as if he had returned to that he was a gentleman. But you are all alone now. You don't have a lover or a family, so you don't have to worry about being implicated. Furthermore, in this world, those who stand high can see far. Those who stand high can also do more. If he wanted to protect the people he wanted to protect, it was not enough to just rely on a teacher. Even though teacher is able to have students all over the world, but Shen Miao calmly and leisurely raised her cup. It was obvious that she was smiling, but in a moment there was an indifferent coolness. She said, When something really happens, the noble families would avoid it like the plague. So how would they do their best? It is to be the right as it is to be as to be strong. By one, as one's strength as one can. As. Who taught you to say these words, and what is the purpose? What benefits is there for him if I enter officialdom? Shen Miao gently smiled. Pei Lang, this person, looked gentle and indifferent, and was indeed a gentleman who did not care about external things and wholeheartedly devoted himself to teaching. But whenever he discussed about matters, he would always be able to get to the crux of the matter. In the previous life, Fu Xiaoyi thought of all ways to win Pei Lang over to be his advisor and even ascended to the throne of the nation's tutor. It was not by chance. Why does Gentleman Pei ask what benefits are there for others, but not ask what benefits are there for oneself? Shen Miao did not answer his question, but cleverly went around in a roundabout way and replied indifferently, getting promoted, getting rich, and marrying a wife. At the end, the one benefiting is only gentleman yourself. When doing business, how would one ask others how much money one earned, but not mention how much one earned? Chapter 370. How did I profit? Pei Lang said lightly. Teacher did not profit, but young Lady Luing did. Shen Miao smiled as she looked at him, and her bright eyes flashed. A female turning good and having a steady reliance for the rest of her life is equivalent to saving another's life. Pei Lang stared at Shen Miao. If at this time he still did not understand Shen Miao's intention, then he would be a real fool. After entering officialdom, what do I need to do? Pei Lang asked. Shen Miao looked at him with satisfaction. It was Pei Lang's usual style to weigh the pros and cons in the shortest time and make the most advantageous choice. But her mind could not help but think of the time when Fu Xiaoyi deposed the crown prince. She also knelt down and begged Pei Lang. Pei Lang's tone of discussion was as rational and ruthless as now. Now the chips were in her hands, and this once high and mighty imperial tutor could only be manipulated by her. Xin Miao's heart floated with a trace of shallow comfort. This comfort was shown on her face and became joy. Actually, it is nothing much. Xin Miao said, teacher is overflowing with talent, and even if one does not take the initiative to enter officialdom, 1 year later there would naturally be noble people who would solicit you. One only hoped that at that time teacher would not reject the noble person and think of ways to agree to it. Of course on the surface one would agree, but one must be used by me. You want me to be an insider? Pei Lang looked at Xin Miao incredulously. Xin Miao shook her head. How can it be considered as an insider? Teacher can be promoted and get rich. I guarantee that teacher's identity will not be exposed and only need to tell me some news at certain times. Pei Lang was silent for a moment before looking at Xin Miao. Who was the noble person that you were talking about? Xin Miao smiled gently. Prince Ding, Fu Xiuyi. Pei Lang was startled and involuntarily looked at Xin Miao again. He knew that Xin Miao was in love with Prince Ding in the past to the point that it became a laughing stock in the city, and also knew that Prince Ding, that kind of hidden person, would be dismissive of Xin Miao. Afterwards, one did not know when it started, but Xin Miao seemed to have changed into another person. Pei Lang had always felt that there was someone behind Xin Miao giving pointers, but at this moment thinking about it, he could not help but guess. Could it be that it was because love turned to hate that she even schemed against Prince Ding? But just because love was not reciprocated, one would do such things? Pei Lang was confused. The girl in front of him was pretty in men's clothing. After drinking wine, there was a faint blush on her cheeks. She was in the prime of her youth, and her appearance was fair and lovely. Her eyes were like a newborn cub's, untainted by even a speck of dust. However, in her every movement, there was an inadvertent flirtatiousness. Pei Lang felt a little uncomfortable. To him, talking to a young lady of Shen Miao's age was like an elder talking to a younger generation, or at least like an older brother talking to a younger sister. But at this moment, it seemed that he was the one at a disadvantage. His every move was being led by the nose, and he couldn't even resist. What do you want? Pei Lang had asked this question many times, and until now, he was not sure if the person who did these things was someone else or Shen Miao herself. It was as if his trump card had been seen by Shen Miao, but he did not even understand Shen Miao's initial purpose. He was absolutely suppressed. I don't want to do anything. I just want to make a decision that's good for me and Sir. Shen Miao smiled as she tucked a lock of hair behind her ear, making her neck as white as jade. She said, Teacher, are you going to agree or not? I can only answer here. Pei Lang asked. You have. Shen Miao pointed to the wine pot. Time for a pot of wine. After drinking this pot of wine, teacher will tell me the answer. No need. Pei Lang interrupted her words. If you can do what you promised, I will agree to it. There was a moment of silence in the room. After a moment, Shen Miao smiled. She lifted the wine pot and filled the 2 empty cups with wine before picking up the cup in front of her and made a gesture to toast with Pei Lang. Chapter 371. Pei Lang hesitated for a moment before raising his cup. There was a strange feeling in his heart. To drink with one's own student in a restaurant. His heart was somewhat hot. I wish Mister's future bright and boundless prospects. Shen Miao smiled as she drank the wine in one gulp. She drank it very quickly, and a trace of wine flowed out from the corner of her mouth, across her slightly pointed chin and into her white collar. Pei Lang looked away. No matter how beautiful a budding young female was, she was still young and inexperienced. Especially Shen Miao, this kind of gentle and delicate beauty, she was dignified and reserved. Pei Lang was not a person who loved beauty, but for a moment, his mind was in a mess as he felt that this was not right and out of place. A trace of carefreeness flashed in Shen Miao's eyes. Most likely it was because she drank the wine that some hidden emotions in her heart came out like a sin. She remembered that Pei Lang had a dignified and solemn appearance and was most particular about reason. In front of Pei Lang, she vividly interpreted the 4 words motherly model of the world, but at the end she was still defeated by Pei Lang's pros and cons. That was the imperial tutor who could decide Fu Ming's life and death in the previous lifetime, but now she was holding onto his weak spot. In front of Pei Lang, she had the bearing of an empress and could not even cry for Wan Yu. Now, She did not have the dignity of an empress and did not have the virtues of a woman. She dressed up as a male, went to a brothel, and drank with a teacher. Her actions were frivolous and unrestrained. What could Pei Lang do? He also could not do anything to her. But that carefreeness was only for a short moment. When Pei Lang agreed, she knew that there was no need to continue pestering him. The flirtatious look that was caused by the wine faded away, and inch by inch she became sober. She stood up and lifted her chin slightly, returning to that slightly dignified Shan Miao. After young Lady Lu Ying has settled down, one will inform Mr. of the location of the embroidery workshop. Shin Miao nodded her head. The money has already been paid. Mr. Please drink slowly. One cannot often drink the wine of the Lu. One did not know if the last sentence was sarcasm or politeness, but it made Pei Lang's brows slightly wrinkled as he watched Shan Miao leave with a few people. He picked up the wine and drank a mouthful. It should be a mellow wine, but it was surprisingly astringent in his mouth. Walking out of the door, Jingzhe and Guyu did not dare to speak as both of them could see that Shan Miao was not in a good mood at the moment. Pei Lang's words made them confused in the clouds and sensitively felt that this matter was not a small matter, thus they did not dare to speak easily. When the cold wind blew, the blush on her face dissipated. Shin Miao closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, there was only coldness in her eyes. As for Pei Lang, she still held a grudge against him for standing idly by the side. No matter how hard she tried to hide it, it still leaked out a little. However, his goal was achieved. Let's go back. She walked towards the carriage. In another hidden room adjacent to Kuai Hualu, the few people in the room were all silent. Just now he had seen a good show. At first he thought it was full of fun, but now that the person had left, the tea had cooled. Thinking about it carefully, he couldn't help but feel astonished. Jiyushu swallowed his saliva and seemed to want to break this dull atmosphere. It is really good to have a relationship with this building. At least it is more convenient to eavesdrop on the walls. Not only can one listen, one can also see. Haha, very good. At the back of the carved pillar, there was a huge colored glass that was hidden by the thin railing. It was said that it was colored glass that came from the Western Hemisphere. One end could not see this end, but this end could see that end. In addition, there was a copper pillar that was full of small holes, so everything that was said could be heard clearly. But when Jiyushu finished speaking, the other two people in the room did not answer him. Gao Yang used his folding fan to support his chin, which was his usual appearance when he was thinking. Xie Jingxing bent his elbow to support his head as he played with the teacup in his hands while thinking about something. Unable to stand such an atmosphere, Jiyushu opened his mouth. Both of you do not remain silent. Isn't it just a matter of Prefectural Magistrate Pei's residence in the Lu province? Pei Lang is Prefectural Magistrate Pei's son. Shin Miao's story was easily told because she believed that Pei Lang could understand, and the three people here were not fools, so they understood after thinking about it. The Lu province's Sinner Prefectural Magistrate Pei had a pair of children. The older sister was Lu Ying, and the younger brother was the current Pei Lang. During the escape, in order to protect Pei Lang, the Pei family arranged people to abandon Lu Ying, and Lu Ying eventually fell into prostitution. And Pei Lang had already arranged a retreat route for the Pei family and turned into a Ding capital person. He lived here since young and was born into a merchant family. His parents passed away a few years ago, and now he was alone. His natural background was not discovered by anyone for many years. However, Xie Jingxing's lips lazily hooked up. So how did she know about the details that Bai Xiaosheng was unable to find out? At the end, his voice turned cold and his peach blossom eyes were filled with murderous intent. Chapter 372. How so? Jiyushu asked. Gao Yang touched his chin. Since one wants to deal with Prince Ding, it is not just Prince Ding's side. The Crown Prince, Prince Zhou and Prince Li. Which side is Shen Miao's people on? Not on any side. Xie Jingxing said. Jiyushu felt strange. Why is it not on any side? Xie Jingxing's eyes slightly slowed down. Pei Lang is not an ordinary person but has yet to enter officialdom and is still immature. Just now all of you have heard that Shen Miao's moves, Shen Xian may not be able to use it as neatly as her. Slippery and slippery, not admit. not deny, not decline, and also not accept. The officials who had been in and out of the sea of officials for many years might not be able to do it as smoothly as her. Shen Xian was a military general and Luo Shuiyan was also a military general. So where did Shen Miao learn this? Was there an expert guiding the Shen family? He originally thought so, but now it seemed that it was Shen Miao's own idea. If she was the crown prince or other prince's people, she would not use such a step-by-step planning method. Each prince had their own power behind them, so how would they use such a clumsy method? However, she was able to maximize the goal that she could achieve within the scope of her own ability. One could not help but wonder how big of a storm she would be able to stir if she was given enough background and power. Even if she did not have any chips in her hands now, she could still slowly cultivate chess pieces. The world was like a chess game, and in this chess game of Ming Qi, there were too many people playing. But Xie Jingxing had never placed Shen Miao in it. She was a weak female and had no motive. But now Xie Jingxing could see her ambition through the young female's ability to win over a hero with a cup of wine. But we still do not know how she knew about Pei Lang's background. Ji Yushu said, even the Fengxian pawnshop did not manage to find out. Prefectural Magistrate Pei's residents used all their strength to protect this son of his, so they must have made full preparations. Pei Lang indeed did not disappoint his father's expectations. Chapter 373. Xinxiu was also happy. Little sister is so thoughtful. All you know is to drink. Luo Shuiyan rolled her eyes at the father and son pair and said, those things can be bought by the servants. Jiao Jiao doesn't need to care about them. You this woman. Shen Xian was unhappy again. It is all Jiao Jiao's kind intentions. How can the servants buy the same as Jiao Jiao? How short-sighted. It was rare for Shen Miao to have such a close relationship with them, and Shen Xian was very happy. Even if Shen Miao brought back 2 jars of water, he would be happy to the heavens, so naturally he would refute Luo Shuiyan's words. Short-sighted? Luo Shuiyan squinted at him. Foreign is happy or angry. Shen Xian immediately said, I am a stinky brat who is short-sighted. Shen Xian slapped Shanqiu's head. Luo Shuiyan was too lazy to see the father and son putting on a show and looked at Shen Miao. Jiao Jiao, the reason for coming here today is actually because there is a matter to discuss with you. Mother, please speak. You've heard about the separation of the family. Your father and I have also thought it through. We have to buy a new house. There was a house in the east of the city that was not bad. He could buy some maids to clean and serve him. It's just... Luo Shuiyan looked at Shen Miao and was somewhat embarrassed. Previously, when your father and I went to the northwest region, we left you behind and felt that with the protection of the Shen family, you would be more stable. Now that the family has separated, if your father, your big brother, and I leave, you're a girl. It's not safe for you to live alone in a house, and you're also afraid of people talking nonsense. So, Jiao Jiao, are you willing to go to the northwest with me? Shen Miao was slightly startled. Sister, the northwest is so fun. Xinxiu saw that Shen Miao was in a daze and quickly said, it is not as exaggerated as what they said. Living in the Shaochun city, there are mountains on one side and rivers on the other. There are also many rare birds and beasts. At that time to hunt, one would be able to get a white tiger skin to make a cloak for you. Nonsense. Luo Shuiyan laughed and scolded. Your sister is a girl. What does she need the white tiger skin for? Xinxiu scratched his head. There's also a mine. The gemstones there are huge. Sister can also make jewelry. Shen Miao smiled slightly. She was still somewhat hesitant because there were other things to do in the Ding capital, but after hearing Shanqiu's words, she had some yearning for the Shaochun city in the northwestern region. Who didn't want to live a carefree life? Who was willing to open their eyes and think about how to scheme against others every day? She sighed in her heart. She would just go along with it. As long as she went this once, she would not have to go next year. All right. Under everyone's expectant gaze, Shen Miao nodded her head. I also want to go and experience it. Luo Shuiyan gave a sigh of relief. Shen Xian laughed loudly. I already said that Jiao Jiao would definitely agree. After coming back for so long, when has Jiao Jiao ever despised us martial artists? Younger sister, Shunxiu was also excited. When the time comes, I will bring you to see my brothers. They all know that I have a younger sister and have never seen you before. You haven't seen your grandfather's family since you were born, so you won't be able to recognize them this time. Luo Shuiyan's paternal family was a military general in the northwestern region, and they only rushed over once when Shen Miao was born. Afterwards, because they were separated by 1,000 li, they did not see each other in these years. Shen Miao's eyes drooped. In the last lifetime, after Luo Shuiyan's death, the Luo family and the Shen family broke off contact. Shen Miao did not have a deep relationship with the grandfather's family, so she was not clear what kind of ending the Luo family would have. But thinking about it, with Mei Foran's ruthless methods, there would be a way to make Fu Xiu not let off the Luo family. After speaking some more until it was late, Luo Shuiyan then rushed Shen Miao back to her room to rest. After Shen Miao freshened up, she sat in front of the table and looked at the dancing flames and could not help but sigh. If she really wanted to follow Shen Xi into the northwestern region, then she had to settle everything in this half a year. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.